Okay, so get ready because today we're going deep on something. We
Oh,
don't usually tackle this. So
right.
life, death, and
Oh, well.
soap bubbles. You heard that right? Soap bubbles.
Yeah,
You're probably thinking,
that's a new one.
what do soap bubbles have to do with life and death? Well,
Really?
I was thinking the same thing, but we're going to find out because today we're diving into a chapter from a book that explores
Uh-huh.
death from a yogic perspective, and it uses the soap bubble analogy
Yeah.
to reframe how we think about these big concepts.
It is definitely a very different way to look at things.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's just start with death. We
Hmm.
usually think of death as the end,
Right.
lights out, game over. But this chapter suggests that death, at least in the yogic view, is more of a transformation than a complete ending.
Okay.
And this is where that soap bubble analogy comes in.
So the idea is that our lives, right, are like
Mm-hmm.
these soap bubbles, each one unique and shimmering. And the thickness of the bubble wall represents how much karmic baggage we're carrying.
Karmic baggage. So we're not just talking about physical stuff then. This is
Yeah.
deeper.
Exactly. In the yogic system, karma is about the accumulation of all of our actions, all of our intentions, not just from this life, but from previous lives too.
Mm.
It's like this massive library of experiences, and it just shapes
Mm-hmm.
who we are
Wow.
and how we experience the world.
I'm already feeling my brain stretching a little bit.
Yeah.
So this karmic baggage, this library, is what determines the thickness of our bubble wall then.
Yes. Think of it this way. Sanchita karma is the entire library.
Yeah.
Right? It's like all those books on the shelves. Then you have Prarabdha karma, which is like the book you chose to read in this lifetime. It's the specific portion of karmic baggage that you're working through
Mm.
in this particular life.
That's a helpful way to think about it.
Yes.
So some people are born with thicker bubble walls, more karmic density to work through, while others maybe have thinner walls, a little lighter load.
Exactly. And this karmic makeup influences everything from our personality traits to the challenges we face and how we react to them. Someone with a thicker bubble wall might find it really hard to bounce back from setbacks, while someone with a thinner wall might seem to effortlessly navigate life's
Right.
ups and downs.
I'm already thinking about people in my own life.
Yeah.
Some just roll with the punches, and then others get thrown off by the slightest thing. Maybe it's
Right. It's an interesting,
their karmic bubbles at play.
yeah, it's a really interesting way to look at those differences, isn't it?
It is. Now, where does genetics fit into all of this? Because we've talked about karma, but, we inherit certain traits
Mm.
from our parents and our ancestors, too.
So that's where genetic memory comes in. The yogic system actually recognizes that our genetic makeup plays a role in shaping our bubble. It's like the material of the bubble itself,
Okay.
influencing our physical characteristics and predispositions.
So it's like a combination of the bubble material and the thickness of the wall that creates our own unique life.
Yeah, exactly. And this kind of brings us back to the concept of death as a transformation, right?
Right.
What happens to the bubble when we die?
Right. Does it pop and disappear?
Well, not necessarily. Remember that karmic memory, that whole library of experiences we were talking about?
Mm.
Well, that persists even after the physical body dies.
Really?
It's kind of like the air inside the bubble. It might disperse, but it doesn't vanish.
So even though the bubble dissolves, the essence, the karmic energy within it continues.
Yes, and it can influence future lives. Just like the air from one bubble might form a new one, carrying those traces of the previous bubble. But here's where it gets really fascinating.
I knew there had to be a really fascinating part.
The source actually suggests that a truly big bubble, like a life lived with incredible awareness and expansion,
Mm.
can dissolve completely upon death, reaching a state of nirvana.
Nirvana. Wait, are we talking about like achieving liberation from the cycle of death and rebirth?
That's the idea.
Yeah.
It's like the bubble becomes so vast and so thin that it just merges back into the infinite universe.
Okay.
No more individual bubble, just pure essence.
That is mind-blowing. So it's not about living a long life or accumulating a lot of stuff. It's really about
It's about the quality
the quality of our experience.
of your experience, the expansion of your consciousness.
Absolutely. So it suggests that we have a lot more agency than we think
Yes.
in shaping not just our lives, but our deaths
Mhm.
and what comes after. So if we could consciously choose the thickness of our bubble wall, how would we approach life differently? What kind of bubble would we want to create? And I think that's a great question for everyone to ponder as we go into the next part of our deep dive. Welcome back.
So we're in the middle of unpacking this crazy idea, our lives as soap bubbles, each one shaped by our karmic baggage.
Our genetics, the choices we make. And before the break, we left off on this idea that a truly expansive life, like a really, really big bubble, can actually dissolve completely upon death,
Yeah.
reaching a state of nirvana. I don't know, that's kind of mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it definitely challenges our usual understanding
Yeah.
of life and death.
Yeah.
And it raises a lot of interesting questions about how we approach our lives.
Absolutely. Like, if we have the potential to thin our bubble walls, to become more aware, more expansive,
Yeah.
how do we actually do that? It can't just be about, sitting on a mountaintop and meditating all day, right?
Right. That's a really good question. And actually, the source addresses that directly. It emphasizes that spiritual practices aren't just about withdrawing from the world.
Okay.
They're about refining how we engage with it.
So it's more about being in the world, but not of it, as they say.
Precisely. And they highlight two main approaches to this whole thinning process.
Yeah.
One is working on it from the inside through practices like meditation and awareness, and the other is wearing it down through action.
So it's not an either.
Right.
It's we can meditate.
Yeah,
and
take action, and both can contribute to the thinning.
Got it. So the source even gives this fascinating example of a tribal village near the Isha Yoga Center, and the people there have almost no sleep disorders.
Really?
What's their secret?
It's pretty simple, actually. Their lifestyle is just incredibly physically active.
Oh, okay.
They work hard all day long, and by the time they go to bed, they're exhausted.
Makes sense.
They fall asleep instantly. They wake up refreshed.
Wow. So they're basically wearing down their karmic bubbles through just natural physical exertion.
Yeah.
It makes me think about how, we live today, right?
Yeah.
So much screen time, so much sedentary behavior.
Mm.
No wonder a lot of us struggle with sleep and focus.
It's a stark contrast, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Like, I've definitely had my share of sleepless nights.
It really highlights how our energy allocation impacts not just our physical well-being,
Right.
but also our mental and emotional states,
Yeah.
and even our spiritual practices.
It's like we're trying to meditate
Yeah.
with all this pent-up energy buzzing around inside us.
Exactly.
So no wonder it's hard to quiet the mind.
It makes sense.
Hmm.
The source explains that in the yogic system, this allocation of energy is very closely tied to our karmic makeup.
Okay.
It's like we're born with a certain amount of energy for different areas of life, physical, mental, emotional. And how we use that energy really plays a role in shaping our experiences.
Wait, hold on. So you're saying that we're born with a set amount of energy for like different
For different aspects.
Yeah,
Right.
aspects of life. So like some people are naturally more physically energetic and some are more mentally energetic, that kind of thing.
Okay. I mean, it's not like a rigid deterministic system, though, right?
Right, exactly. We have the ability to,
Influence how this energy is used and even generate more through things like yoga and meditation.
it makes me feel a bit better. I was starting to think I was just stuck with whatever my current energy levels were. But if we can manage it and increase it, that opens up some
Right.
possibilities. But I'm still curious about this whole death as transformation thing. I mean, we've talked about how our karmic memory persists even after the body dies,
Right.
how it can influence future lives.
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like? What happens to our consciousness when we die?
That's a question that has intrigued philosophers and spiritual seekers for centuries. And the source offers some really fascinating insights from the yogic perspective. So it explains that death isn't seen as this abrupt ending,
Okay.
but rather a gradual process of shedding different layers of our being.
So it's not like flipping a switch.
Right.
It's more of a gradual unwinding.
Exactly. So first, we shed the physical body. That's what we typically think of as death. But the subtler layers, the mental and energy bodies, they continue for a period of time, carrying the karmic memory.
So there's still a sense of me, like a sense of consciousness, even after the physical body is gone.
That's the idea. Now, it's not the same as our embodied consciousness, of course.
Yeah.
It's more subtle, maybe more dreamlike. And the source explains that this transition period can vary a lot depending on the individual's karmic baggage and, the level of awareness they cultivated during their lifetime.
So what happens after this transition period? Does our consciousness just float around forever?
This is where it gets really interesting. The force suggests that for most people, this karmic memory eventually gathers together, kind of like the air from a popped bubble forming a new one.
Okay.
And this leads to rebirth, the beginning of a new life,
Oh, wow.
a new opportunity to kind of continue that journey of evolution.
So it's like a cosmic recycling program.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And then the nature of this new life is influenced by that karmic residue
Mm-hmm.
from the previous lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's like those traces of the old bubble influencing the shape and the color of the new one.
Wow, that is profound stuff.
Yeah.
But what about that big bubble scenario? We talked about the one that dissolves completely upon death,
Right.
achieves nirvana. What about that?
Yeah, so that's the ultimate goal in the yogic system.
Right.
It's complete liberation from that whole cycle of birth and death. And it's not something that just happens overnight. It
Okay.
requires a lifetime, maybe many lifetimes,
Yeah.
of dedicated practice and refinement.
So it's not about just being a good person or
Yeah.
doing good deeds.
It's about something deeper, something much more transformative.
Okay. I think I'm starting to grasp the enormity of this concept.
Yeah.
It's not just about our individual lives, it's about our place in this vast cosmic dance of creation and dissolution. But how do we know
Yeah.
if we're on the right track? Are there any signs? Are bubbles actually thinning?
The source mentions a few key indicators.
Okay.
One is an increasing sense of inner peace and stability, regardless of what's happening externally. It's like the bubble becomes less reactive, less easily swayed by the winds of change.
So instead of getting blown all over the place, with every little thing, we develop a stronger sense of grounding.
Precisely. Another sign is a growing capacity for compassion and empathy. It's like the bubble wall becomes more permeable, allowing us to connect more deeply with others in the world around us.
Makes sense. If we're less caught up in our own little bubble of concerns, then we have more space to care about others.
Exactly. And as this happens, our actions naturally become more selfless, more aligned with, the well-being of all,
Right.
rather than just our own personal gains.
So it's not just about thinning the bubble wall.
Right.
It's also about
What you're filling it with,
what we're filling it with.
the quality of your intentions and actions.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating qualities like love, compassion, wisdom, joy, the qualities that really make life expansive and meaningful.
It's like you're transforming that bubble from a fragile, isolated sphere into something much more resilient,
Yeah.
more interconnected, more luminous.
That's beautiful. And as we do this, the source suggests that the very nature of death itself actually starts to change. Instead of being something to fear, it becomes a natural transition, shedding the old to make way for the new.
That's a big shift in perspective, isn't it?
It is. Before we move into our final segment, I want to leave our listeners with a question to ponder. So if you could actually choose the thickness of your karmic bubble wall right now,
Okay.
what would you choose? Would you go for the thick wall, to feel safe and protected, or a thinner one, maybe for more freedom and expansion? It's an interesting question.
It really is. It gets to the heart of, what this soap bubble analogy is all about. It's not about judging ourselves or other people for the thickness of our bubbles. It's really just about understanding, the forces at play and recognizing that we have the power to actually influence our own trajectory.
Right, and it's empowering, right? Like we're not just stuck with the bubble that we're given.
No, not at all.
We can actually
We
work
can work on it.
to thin those walls,
Yeah.
create a more expansive experience. So the source gives some really practical advice on how to do that. Remember those two approaches, working on it from the inside and wearing it down through action.
Yes.
Well, the source goes into more detail about each one.
Right.
So let's start with the working from the inside approach. What does that actually look like?
So it involves cultivating awareness, both of our inner world and the world around us.
Okay.
Practices like meditation, mindfulness, and self-reflection can help us become more conscious of, like our thoughts, our emotions, and our habitual patterns.
So it's about becoming more aware of the software that's
Yes.
running in the background.
Exactly. It's like shining a light into the shadowy corners of our minds and seeing what's really lurking there.
But just seeing those patterns doesn't automatically make them go away.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
It's just the first step, really. Once we see them, once we become aware of them, then we can start to question them. Like,
Okay.
are these thoughts and beliefs really true? Are they serving me or are they just limiting me?
So it's about challenging those old karmic scripts that
Yeah.
we're just unconsciously replaying. Okay, what about wearing it down through action? How does that help to thin the bubble walls?
So this approach involves, conscious and intentional action in the world. Remember that example of the villagers wearing down their karmic bubbles
Yeah.
through physical exertion?
Yeah.
Well, The source suggests that any action that's performed with awareness and a sense of offering can contribute to the process.
So it's not just about going to the gym or, doing chores. It's really about
The
the
intention thing.
intention behind it, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so if we approach our work, our
Hmm.
relationships,
Yeah.
our creative endeavors as an opportunity to serve something greater than ourselves, maybe to express our unique gifts and talents,
Hmm.
then those actions can become a form of maybe
Exactly.
spiritual practice.
It elevates the mundane to the sacred, seeing the divine in the everyday.
Yeah. And as we engage in these actions with that awareness, with that intention, we start to purify our
Hmm.
karmic baggage.
It's like you're scrubbing away those layers of density,
Right.
revealing the radiant essence within.
Okay, so it's a combo, inner work and outer work,
Yeah,
both contributing.
both contributing. And actually, the source emphasizes they are interconnected.
Right.
Like as you cultivate inner awareness, your actions become more aligned.
Makes sense.
And as you engage in conscious action, your inner world becomes more clear.
Okay, but let's be real. Most of us aren't living in tribal villages or, spending all of our time in deep meditation. We have lives, right?
Right.
Jobs, families, responsibilities. So how do we actually incorporate these practices into our everyday?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this source acknowledges the challenges
Mm,
of modern life.
mm.
It doesn't say renounce the world, become a hermit.
Right,
It's about finding ways to integrate these practices into
right.
the fabric of our daily lives.
Okay, so it's about finding those little moments
Exactly.
of awareness throughout the day.
Yeah, like taking a few deep breaths before a meeting or
Hmm.
bringing mindful attention to your interactions with loved ones, just finding joy in the simple things.
So it's about making those conscious choices that support our spiritual growth,
Mm-hmm.
even amidst all the chaos, the
Huh.
business.
Yeah, it's those small, consistent efforts that add up over time.
That feels more doable than trying to overhaul my entire life.
Uh,
But how do we know if we're making progress?
Right.
Are there any signs that our bubble is actually thinning and that we're moving closer to that state of liberation?
So the source suggests that as we progress on this path, certain qualities naturally begin to blossom within us. One is an increasing sense of inner peace
Hmm.
and stability, regardless of the external circumstances.
So instead of getting blown all over the place,
Right.
we develop a stronger sense of
Grounding.
grounding.
And another sign is a growing capacity for compassion and empathy.
Hmm.
It's like the bubble wall becomes more permeable, allowing us to connect more deeply with others.
Makes sense. If we're less caught up in our own bubble,
Right.
we have more space to care about other people. So it's not just about thinning the bubble wall. It's about
It's about what you're filling it with,
what we're filling it with, right?
the quality of your intentions.
Okay, it's about cultivating those qualities.
Mm.
The love, compassion, wisdom, joy. It's what makes life truly meaningful. And as we do this, the source says the nature of death starts to change. Instead of fearing it,
Right.
it becomes a natural transition.
Shedding the old to make way for the new.
Wow. I feel like we've gone on quite a journey today, from soap bubbles to karmic baggage to the possibility of nirvana.
Yeah, it's been an eye-opening exploration.
It has. And it reminds us that life is so much more than what we see on the surface. It's this vast, mysterious journey of evolution, and we have the power to shape our own destinies. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the nature of life, death, and those karmic bubbles. We hope it's given you some new insights, maybe inspired you to think about the boundless potential within each of us. Until next time, may your bubbles be thin, shimmering, and filled with the light of awareness.